Awesome. Well, we can get started. My name is Mike Gordon with 3D Dental. We have Paul here joining us as our sales director, and he'll be answering. So anytime throughout this webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to put that into the questions at the bottom of your screen there in the Zoom, and Paul will work them into the conversation, and there'll also be an opportunity at the end of the presentation for more questions as well. Today's mission is to give everyone a really realistic view of what it is to actually adopt LuxCreo in-house aligners and retainers and the rest of their system, and what it is to really work with that in the clinic. We'll cover some, broad strokes on the overall technology, but we're really focused on the actual workflow itself today. Any other questions though that you have and any information you need, always feel free to reach out to us. Our information will be at the end, and we're really interested in helping people push this technology further. So a little introduction to 3DNA. We were an IT company and doing a lot of hardware creation and software support for small businesses. And we did some initial prototyping in 3D printing early on. And then we were brought on by a couple of GPs to help integrate 3D printing within their clinics. And we definitely noticed a big opportunity to help, since it was quite a complicated introduction at the time. This was about 5 years ago now. But either way, like the number of things that had to be understood to be successful, adopting workflows like this made it pretty clear that there was a need for a specified IT company for this type of stuff. So our mission has become to increase well-being through digital dentistry and really help the adoption of these technologies to increase well-being for the patients, for the clinics, lower prices, and there's a lot of benefits environmentally as well. So these are all things we're really excited to help with. Again, today we're going over the LuxCreo overview. We'll do a quick, we'll show what the equipment takes up in terms of space in the clinic. We'll talk about the features of the material. And then, like I said, we'll go through an actual full-on workflow of what it is to create. In this case, we'll do the retainers, but doing aligners is extremely similar. And then the post-processing and all the way to getting ready for packaging and delivery. So, and we'll talk at the end about key takeaways and why this is an exciting time to jump into this technology. So LuxCreo was actually the first FDA-approved clear aligner material in the United States. They took about 2 or 3 more years, maybe 2 years, to really develop the rest of their solution. So they really took their time to create a in-house solution where everything could be under one roof and really quality controlled properly. They have everything from the software for creating the aligners from models and from shells for retainers especially, and then all the way through the tray creation, the slicing, nesting that's super fast and integrated, and just made the workflow itself, all the curing and the washing and heating processes are all really easy to understand, integrate, and mostly hands-off as much as possible. So they've automated it as much as possible. They were also the first to, or not the first necessarily, but they have digital polishing with the highest quality and the fastest speed that's currently available. So that's a big plus with them. And they have opened up to quite a few other resins that are really the top resins for different workflows, so that they really are an amazing all-in-one solution, especially for GPs. But definitely orthodontists have a huge factor here with the clear aligners being the biggest part of this, or the biggest novel aspect of it. So DCA is what the aligner resin is called. It's quite comparable actually to traditional thermoformed aligners in terms of what we're used to seeing. And it is maybe a little more rigid in the mouth, but also has an incredible property of being able to return back to shape when brought close to its glass transition temperature. We're having a little bit of a internet issue here. Here we go. So when you place your device in warm enough water, so in our case, we talk about 60 degrees Celsius bath, and that allows the shape memory, or essentially the 3D printed prosthetic, to return back to its shape. because you're approaching your glass transition temperature. So it becomes soft again, and it allows it to return back to its shape because it was 3D printed and has that cross-linked pattern. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. But that's really a huge feature as to why direct print aligners are going to be very popular going forward, because they can allow for a much higher accuracy, not only from the digital aspect of, really there's no analog loss of quality from the thermoforming process. And so there's already a huge amount of added accuracy from that sense. And then on top of that, being able to return back to shape each day when the device is clean really allows for potential increase in tracking. So again, the actual experience in the mouth has gone amazing so far, but definitely waiting on enough data to really express all of this really clearly. But so far, it's been very, very, very exciting. It looks really promising. Now with LuxCreo, what's really cool is they're actually really compatible with any planning software that can export models. So that pretty much any software that you have used or could use for the planning process is available to work with their AI, as long as you can create a model. If your software can also make PTS files, which is essentially the margin line of your desired margin line for your aligner, that can also be brought in automatically, and it can be taken as the margin line in the software for LuxCreo. So that's a big plus, to have that additional level of control and still get the very fast automated version of creating the aligners themselves. And then if you're used to not making your own plans, let's say you're using Invisalign or ClinCheck, and you're having that done, it's the process can be very similar. So you can have people plan for you and give you the link to review and go from there. So it makes it very easy to integrate. In terms of the space required for the equipment for LuxCreo, we have essentially you need a 4x4 space. Here we show about 4 feet by 30 inches high, but then there's also the need for the heating oven, and then you'll also need some lab space to do the hands-on aspects of removing supports and polishing and removing from the build plate and things like that. But overall, it's a very, very, easy to integrate, doesn't take up a lot of space, and is incredibly versatile. So a lot of possibilities. Again, any questions at all, please put those in the question. It is important, here we talk about it, it is very important that we have a level, strong surface where we put our printer. So that's something to consider. And also being away from direct sunlight. So if it's a room with a window, you do need to consider that as well. But the equipment is very easy to install. Our services allow for where we help you completely with that process as well. But it's very, very intuitive. And LuxCreo has a really awesome training program called LuxAcademy, and we give access to that as soon as people are getting on board. And it allows your staff to be you and your staff to be very integrated with this even before the equipment arrives. So it goes all the way through unpacking, installation, calibration, which is all stuff that, again, we can help with directly as well. So what was really, really amazing about LuxCreo is, again, when they started with their material, they really perfected the material first. And that came through a series of different things, but they actually originally were in the industrial space with shoes, so direct print shoes, shoe soles primarily, and some other industrial applications. And through that process, really, we were able to nail down being able to print elastomeric, sort of flexible resins, and doing that accurately and consistently. So that's, from an industrial perspective, it's being able to not have failures is a huge part of LuxCreo's mission, in terms of, like, when you hit print, it's going to work. And so that was very important in their past, and it's very, very transferable into dental, and it's been a huge plus. They have their LuxDesign software that they've created in-house. So that allows you to create the trays, create models for being able to create trays, and retainers. And then they also have other integrated aspects coming for making, for example, EMAs, so sleep devices, potentially transitional retainers, all kinds of different products will be coming as time goes on. And their software currently is desktop-based, but they will also be moving to a cloud-based version So definitely a lot of progress coming, but already we'll see here shortly. It's really, really fun and easy as it is already. So the integration is very approachable. And then when you're finished with your designs with LuxDesign, they have LuxFlow, which allows a direct transfer from design into your nesting and slicing software for the printer. And it automatically will orient, support, and place those on the build plate for you. So it's very, very, very friendly for the clinic. And not just for aligners, also for all the other common aspects for dental. So we'll be seeing all that as we go. So here is a video of the LuxDesign software being used. So this is this current desktop version. Um, it has the ability to do a manual design, so you can go step by step and control each aspect of each tray creation. So for certain cases, when you have let's say missing teeth and some difficulties where the AI is going to have a hard time, that may be required still. But ideally, what we have is it'll tell you kind of make sure to, when you create your models through your aligner process or your planning process, to make sure to not have certain features there so that the AI doesn't get messed up. But this is a profile where you can essentially control things like blockout or the tightness of the fit, as well as the thickness of the aligner itself. So it goes currently all the way down to 0.6 millimeters, and as large as 1.2 millimeters. And the next version of their resin will allow us to go down to 0.5 millimeters. So that's kind of more, it's interesting how that is, because traditional thermoformed aligners actually, they get a lot thinner in the areas that they get stretched. So because of that, when people place a actual 0.6 or 0.7 millimeter tray in their mouth, they think it feels larger or thicker than traditional aligners. And that's not technically the case. When you first start with a thermoform sheet, it starts out at, let's say, 1.2, and then, or 1 maybe, generally, and then as it gets thermoformed, it gets thinned out. So in our case, what's amazing is we can really control it completely. We have the ability to customize the thickness on the uniform thickness of the occlusal surface, or you can thin the occlusal and have a thicker, let's say, lingual or buccal surface area. You can have gradient or customized thickness where you're doing that yourself. Again, for the thickness, that's totally up to you. And as you get more experience with this, it'll be case dependent, but also very easy. So you can have a very standardized procedure, or you can have as much customization as you want. You can see there, if the PTS file is missing, automatically invoke AI to generate the trim line. That's where we were talking about. If your planning software exports a top PTS file, that's basically to describe where that margin line is, and LuxDesign can just automatically bring that in. Now, looks like we're having a little more internet issue. Okay, let's do this back. Okay, so we're right about there. Hopefully you guys can see. Well, it's gonna be really small. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so you can invoke your .pts file for the trim line, or you can have the AI generate your trim line, and it has several different options. I'm gonna have to move my mouse. As we get to retainer here. Okay, so here's if you're moving, so you're either working directly from a model, or you're working from an open shell scan. So here is for a retainer, you can use the Lux AI to develop that. With the classic Lux AI, you can only do a straight margin or a straight line. And with the new Lux AI Pro, we can do scalloped, hybrid, or straight line. You still have all those options for the different blockouts or different tightness levels, let's say. So basically, depending on tooth morphology of how much undercuts there are, that's the consideration there. And beyond other, I'm sure there are many others, but that's the main consideration. So that's essentially to understand how you can create profiles, the profiles to be able to make these auto-generated aligners and retainers. So in this case, we're going to do a retainer. That's another warning to show you, like, make sure that you've checked your mesh to make sure there's no holes in the mesh, all that kind of stuff. And now we're just going to go in and we're going to choose retainer, choose the profile that we want, and then choose the files that we're going to be using. So these are basically just upper and lower scans. And those come in just like that. And again, we've chosen the profile that we want to use. We can add some notes here. And the folder name, the folder name you would make the patient name, ideally. And then if you hit confirm there, now you've created this case and you can hit generate. And so once you click generate, it'll ask to use your credits. So when you purchase the system comes with 4,000 aligner credits and 200 retainer credits. And then from there, you just purchase individually. So I skipped through the actual waiting there because the computer I did that on has some issue or had an issue with their GPU. So we were relying heavily on the CPU, but it generally takes between a minute and a half to, in this case, it took about 10 minutes, I want to say. But again, that's for a computer that really wasn't meant for it. Either way, it completely automated. So it'll just run down if you can go up to 12 files at a time and it'll just run through. So this is the aligner that it generated, or in this case, retainer that it generated. And here we're just going to go ahead and label it. So we have the ability once it's finished to label. We can also adjust our margin line if we aren't happy with how it came out. Labeling in a digital world is much more accurate, let's say, than if you just use the thermoform number on the outside of your model. So, and also it gives us the ability to do all kinds of different things. You have any font you want. You can make symbols. You can change the size of the font very easily. And like for attachment trays, you can make it really, really obvious. So that's fun. And obviously you have the option of doing convex or concave, so in or out. I generally recommend going out just so there's no, material or mechanical property difference of the force application of the aligners, especially. And then here, what we were showing is if you, depending on which choice you choose there, the text is either oriented per the scene or per the device. So depending on where you're labeling, that can be useful. It's that T with the underline or T with the side. And this is just to show you, this is what we worked from in this case. And so you can see where that thermoform, you would have used that impression from the number being on the model. But in our case, we can do that digitally, and it's just a much cleaner, nicer look, especially when it's actually printed and you're looking at it in the hand. So, and then here we show where we can add thickness in any area we want very easily. We don't go a lot into this like in this particular video, but essentially anywhere you want to add thickness, you can. So you can even add bite ramps or turbos or, just any kind of customized thickness that you'd like. You can also subtract material and smooth areas if you want to get rid of some, let's say pockets so that you don't have too much biofilm buildup or things like that. So the smoother the better in some sense. And here we show how we can add attachments. So we can do buttons or hooks, and soon they'll have other STLs that will be available in that way. And these are parametric designs. So once you choose your location, how we're doing here, then you can relocate still, but also size it and go in and out, rotate, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very robust system to be able to customize exactly what you're looking for your particular case.
Mike, are you able to take a question?
Of course.
We have a question. Can I use uLab uAssist with LuxCreo direct print aligners?
Yeah, absolutely.
If so, does uLab require me to use LuxCreo U aligners manufactured in Memphis?
Well, I know that uLab has a very much a direct relationship with LuxCreo and is able to accommodate let's just say that it's one of the easier softwares. If you're already integrated with uLab, it's one of the easier softwares to integrate LuxCreo with. In terms of I don't know if the question is to say that uLab also has a way of just creating the trays themselves. And then if we can bring those into LuxCreo and have LuxCreo support and nest that, I'm guessing that wouldn't be a direct translation just yet, but that could happen. I think ultimately the tray creation aspect was kind of what was missing in all of these planning softwares in the past, because it just wasn't, once you made the model, that was what was going to be used for the fabrication. So that's been one of the hangups, let's say, getting direct print aligners to be clinic friendly. And I'm not 100% sure with uLab if if they have some direct tray creation aspects now, and if that's what you're referring to, or if it's more about just a direct relationship between the planning software into LuxCreo. If it's that, then absolutely LuxCreo is very integrated. But I'm not aware yet. I'm not actually aware if uLab has like a tray creation themselves, and in which case how compatible that is for nesting and supporting primarily. It should be able to, but I'm just not sure if that would be available just yet. But overall, uLab is definitely one of the easier ones to integrate with LuxCreo.
He
But
has
ultimately,
he
yeah,
has a follow-up to his question. What does
sure.
uLab gain by associating with LuxCreo if uLab will lose revenue if we print in-house?
Well, I'm not, I can't speak for them, but I think that as I've learned in my career through working in different entrepreneurial roles, I think that embracing change is really important if you don't want to get left behind. And the reality is that uLab doesn't provide direct print aligners, and the advantages of in-house printing are many, right? Like, is not only can you deliver faster and have a more cost-effective solution, and maybe do provide less trays at a time, so that as the case is progressing, you can adjust your plan throughout the process, which is really a cool advantage. But I think that overall, like for example, LuxCreo has no planning software whatsoever. So I think that that is really where they're going to be focusing, and they have a lot of experience. I know that the founder of LuxCreo, I'm sorry, the founder of uLab was involved in the founding of Invisalign, so, and was one of the key people in ClinCheck at the time. So I think that that's really their focus is on the planning side, and LuxCreo is really on the printing and on the in-clinic side. And I think it's a really great relationship, actually, unless uLab really expects to be able to come out with their own version of this. But as if you've been following the industry, you know that many companies have tried this, and they so far have not really been successful at bringing this to market. And LuxCreo and Graphy have been really the only two so far who've been able to do it. So I think that, from uLab's perspective, it might make sense to partner with someone like LuxCreo, where they have a really robust solution that's been tried and true in the industrial space, but translates really well into dental. And their sort of missing piece was basically what uLab had. So beyond that, I can't really speak too much more about uLab's position.
Well, we have Kevin Dillon on the call as well.
Oh, awesome.
Kevin, would you like to add anything to that
Yeah,
and introduce yourself?
yes, thank you guys. Mike, great job. Thank you, Paul. My name is Kevin Dillon. I'm with LuxCreo. I work very closely with Mike and Paul. I just wanted to speak on the uLab side of it. uLab started as a company to support in-house printing. Then years ago, they transitioned into providing the community with printed or with not printed, with the aligners themselves. With their new CEO, they believe that the future of aligners is in direct printing, and that they want to set themselves up for the future. So they've refocused their marketing efforts to the in-house printing solution. And because they've looked at both Graphy and LuxCreo, and they've come and saw our solution, and we share some key KOLs. LuxCreo and uLab have come together in a marketing partnership in the industry. We've integrated their workflow into ours, which means an integration into our workflow means that your files, whether it's a scan file or whether it's a model file, will come in orientated in the correct spot, correct orientation to start your process. So as you bring in a USS files, there'll be an XML governing file. That's the only file you'll need to bring in, and everything comes in orientated. So with their belief and their new direction that in-house printing aligners is going to be the future, and with LuxCreo having the best solution available right now, it's a natural integration. So I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I mean, that's so cool that we can have you right here with us to help out like that.
Thanks.
Were there,
I'm also gonna let Joe jump on the line here. He's a doctor with a question. Let me just see if I can get him freed up here.
we haven't had the audio from questions, so this is really cool.
Yeah. Give me a minute to figure this out. Let me see. Joe, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. we can hear you.
Yes. Oh, great. All right. Excellent. So I think I just typed a little response there about, I prefer having uLab's techs to set up the cases, but uLab requires me to purchase their U aligners rather than print in-house. Is it, is there or will there be an option for me to pay for UAssist techs the $65 setup fee or higher, obviously if that changes, and me to print LuxCreo in-house?
So I don't know if Kevin's still, as far as I know,
Is Kevin
yeah,
still there?
I don't, if it might be like a one at a time thing for having
Yeah, I'm
like
still,
questions.
Oh, okay.
no,
You want to
he's
put me
available.
on mute then?
No, you're all good.
Kevin's in the background there.
yeah, well, sorry, I missed the question.
Oh,
Yeah.
he's asking like when you use UAssist, so it's like a lab setup fee. They essentially, it seems like they force you to use a further level of their program or their product. And he's wondering if there's a way to go directly from their lab setup fee and having the plan created to LuxCreo. And as far as I know, that
You
should
mean
be
the
possible.
$85, you mean the $85 fee?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think so. I
You
don't
know,
think,
well, so what I do frequently is if I'll do a quick three, which permits me, to print the first three aligners in-house to get the patient started, and then number four through whatever arrives, $20 per aligner from uLab. So I guess I'm just trying to understand from uLab, it seems like their revenues are going to go down if we are allowed to pay the $85 setup fee with their UAssist techs and then just print everything in-house. Unless they own LuxCreo or have a substantial financial investment in LuxCreo, then that makes sense that the whole industry is going that way. I'm just trying to understand, or are they going to say, no, we're going to do the same thing where I can print the first three, do a quick three in-house with LuxCreo printer, but the remainder four through the end of the batch would need to be, $20 per aligner like it is now, or whatever uLab would charge for LuxCreo direct print aligners.
okay, yeah, that's never been presented to me before. Is that something you do routinely? The first
I,
three and then let them do the rest?
Not, I mean, if yes and no. I mean, we do if the patient is kind of, I don't know, I want to say anxious to get started, or, uLab sends me email saying they're backed up and it's going to be a month, and, if we like, with Easter break coming up with schools, the kids are out, it's like, all right, I don't want to wait. I don't want to miss that window. Or conversely, when school goes back, same thing, we want to get these kids started at the end of August before school goes back rather than wait a month. And I honestly think that it helps loosen up the teeth. I mean, I know it helps loosen up the teeth, but it's nice to have no attachments and no IPR. The teeth are all stiff the day one, before I get started. I actually enjoy, I think it's a clinical advantage to put no attachments on the teeth for the first three aligners. The patients, especially the adults, are like, oh, geez, okay, this is going to be tough to get used to. They're way more negatively affected with their outlook when we have to have a 45-minute appointment to put attachments on their teeth and do IPR on, I don't want to say stiff teeth that haven't been moved in 40 years, Um, so the quick three is a nice way to loosen up the teeth for the IPR, start derotating the teeth, and then not a whole lot happens in 6 weeks, but it permits just a kinder, gentler,
Yeah.
when they snap that aligner in with those attachments on for the first time. Those attachments can be really retentive, and my patients the ladies are breaking nails, trying to get the aligners out. Sometimes we use those hooks, but anyway, it's just the way uLab has it structured with their fee schedule is if I do UAssist, I can print the first three aligners in house, but then I must pay uLab for their lab fees for four to the end of the batch.
Very similar to ClinCheck, I believe, yeah.
But I believe you can bring the whole thing in there and print the entire thing yourself. You don't have
Oh,
to have them print the 4.
And honestly, like if that's not the case, there are like pretty much every other planning software does allow for that. So I feel like uLab has to do that at some point. And I would guess that with their integration with LuxCreo, that has to happen. That's got to be a possibility. And also
Yeah,
refinement, the way that we do
Mm.
refinement is going to change as well.
Yes, I mean, Invisalign said they don't do that. You know, they'll never release they're not going to never send us sheets of their resin to do a quick 3. At least that's what my rep said, you know, a long time ago. I don't know if maybe that will change. I guess you never know, but it's I just was wondering, one of my printers died, so I need to buy a new printer. And the question is, you know, do I spend the $20,000 for the LuxCreo ecosystem? If I knew I could print all of my aligners in-house, then there's a financial motivation for me to see that that's worth it. But this is an important question, you know,
Absolutely.
logistically from a, because if it's going to be the same where that's, you know, uLab's going to do aligners number 4 through the end
Yeah.
with LuxCreo in Memphis and polish them and bag them, then that's a different, you know, that's a different, very different business model from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not so sure you're absolutely locked into doing the 4 through to the end. I'm gonna actually, I mean, this is really good for me to know. I'm gonna reach out to my friends at uLab and find out when we get off
Okay,
this.
sounds good.
yeah,
I'll
and
also, yeah, and then you can just reach out to me and we can talk.
Okay, yep.
Um, and I mean, ultimately, it comes down to like, you know, like the planning software, the aspect of getting the planning done. I see that you're very comfortable with uLab, and I think that's important to, you know, establish those relationships and keep them. But ultimately, that has to be able to be available. And if that doesn't work out with uLab, there's definitely some other options. So, and I know like changing over and making that change is not ideal.
Yeah,
But one way or the other, the solution exists 100%, right? With the exact in the way that you described, the solution absolutely is available. We're just not 100% sure if it's directly through uLab in its current configuration, but we're happy to find out for you. So we'll find out and get back to you.
okay, sounds good. Do you want to put me on mute again, or should I put myself on mute?
I can, well, you can go ahead and do it. And then Joe, you know, I'll get with you as well too.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
All right. Hey, thank you. Good exchange of information. Thanks, guys.
All right. So just to continue here with being able to add attachments within that software. So here we're just finishing up putting on a button. And this is again just to show you kind of what's available in the design aspect of LuxDesign through their AI process. So this is very, very manageable from an in-clinic perspective, assuming we can get that planning aspect really figured out and easy for you, depending on how you're integrating it. So we're just going to quick add a label onto we're going to quick add the label onto the second aligner. Again, just to show you, here's our maxillary aligner, or sorry, retainer that was created from that model. And in this case, this is the margin line here was AI generated. It wasn't defined by some kind of file previously. So we kind of already saw this, but this is just basically the step that's currently left for the person working on it digitally, besides the tray creation itself. The rest of it's basically AI now that's doing the bulk of the work, besides that labeling aspect. And you know that's very likely to change as well as time goes on. So here now we're going to jump into LuxFlow, and we're going to show you what that looks like. So and you do have to have LuxFlow open in order to export directly to LuxFlow from LuxDesign.
Hey, before we jump into LuxFlow, can we take another question?
100%.
Okay, it's Real S. So Real S, go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself. And he's asking about the comparison of resins. Are you
Okay.
there?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
I had a question that what's the main difference between the LuxCreo resin and graft resin in direct printing?
Sure. Well, so we started out with Graphy as well, and we've moved to LuxCreo through a combination of decisions. But the main difference between the resins themselves is the glass transition temperature, I'd say, or essentially the flexibility at human body temperature. Graphy is much more flexible and relies on its sort of shape memory even during the aspect of being in the mouth. That's an interesting prospect, and I think that from that perspective, I was always really intrigued by it. But there are some negatives that we found, which is essentially like the post-processing workflow that comes with that type of aligner that they have does not allow, like basically you cure in nitrogen and you don't clean that product off with isopropyl alcohol to remove any residual like monomers on the outer layer. And that was something that was pretty scary for us, and it was a new concept. So we didn't have always the best experience with that, and that kind of pushed us away. And then the material itself is very different from traditional aligners, which is just a little bit less clinically proven or feels friendly to the clinic since it's such a transition. They're definitely success to moving teeth. They did come out with a newer resin that is actually closer to like moved a little bit in the less flexible, so a higher glass transition temperature in their most updated resin. So I think from what I understand and from the cases that we had worked on, there was some difficulty in finishing cases when your flexibility was that high. So when you're not trying to move as much and you don't have as much surface area, or not surface area, but like interproximal, it's like the difference in the force application, and you're really trying to close those gaps at the end. It turned out to be quite difficult with those really flexible resin. But I think that the main difference again is just the approachability, where so first of all with LuxCreo, this is a tried and true method in terms of the post-processing. So we're really confident on not having essentially biocompatibility is really a top concern, and we have not had any issues whatsoever with LuxCreo. And then the flexibility of this material is much closer to thermoformed aligners, but because of that shape recovery and because in the mouth we can essentially provide a low consistent force with LuxCreo's resin, very similar to a thermoformed aligner, without as big of a stress strain curve like changing throughout the day when you first apply that the tray in the mouth. It also, again, with the shape memory, you're redoing that curve each day. So instead of like when you have a traditional thermoformed aligner, you begin at let's say 1500 and you go down from there, and within like 3 days, it's really not doing anything except holding where you got for bone integration to happen, and then move on to the next step. Whereas with LuxCreo, we can, and with any shape, with direct print aligners, when they warm up, they go back to their shape and they can continue to do that curve each day. So from a tracking perspective, that's a big advantage. Again, with the difference between Graphy and LuxCreo, I think it's primarily that flexibility and the way that the resin is treated in the printing and post-processing.
Thank you very much, and I would like to ask one question. How much the patient should wear that direct print aligner? 1 week, 2 weeks, or 10 days, or it depends on the situation?
Yeah, definitely depends. It's a clinical decision for sure. And it depends on how you've been providing clear aligner therapy in the past. But if you're in control of essentially the movement per step on all of your different types of movements and force applications, then that's going to be a big factor in terms of how long you want to keep someone in the tray. But with LuxCreo, essentially, it shouldn't be very different from what you've had in the past, besides the fact that you should need less attachments because of the better fit. So with teeth that have a good amount of undercuts and the morphology to allow for that type of tight fit and retention, we see that we need less attachments with direct print aligners in general because of that added accuracy and the ability to take advantage of those undercuts, because we're not thermoforming and needing to pull off of a model with blockout. And yeah, so from a clinical perspective, essentially, if you're doing more movement per step, you may want to keep them in the aligner longer. If you're doing less, you can do faster transitions. But I think that the bone remodeling is still going to be the limiting factor, and also compliance, right, is a big factor. So with LuxCreo, what's really cool is like each day they can put it in their ultrasonic bath. It heats it up automatically. We're going to go over this a bit later too. But it really makes the process where we're allowing it to be cleaned and and shape recovery, being taken advantage of that shape memory within that cleaning process as well. So really from the perspective of how long to keep it in the mouth, I think it really is a patient and clinic decision. But the beauty is you have complete freedom. You really, especially when you start, depending on the planning softwares or how you're getting your plans done, there's really a complete freedom of how you can accomplish this. With LuxCreo, we do recommend, if they're cleaning every day, it's really not an issue. But because LuxCreo's aligners are a thermoset, is like basically they have more surface area exposed than a traditional aligner because of the printing process, and because we are washing all that residual resin off of the outside of the aligner before we cure, there's just more surface area. So it's more important than traditional aligners to clean them each day. But ultimately, as long as you, like, essentially if people get to where they have a yellowing aligner, they can, or a retainer ideally, since the aligners, we don't want to leave them out the mouth for too long, but if they can leave it soaking in with the ultrasonic bath, run the ultrasonic bath, but then also leave it soaking with a polydent tablet, and it really is able to remove all of that staining or it's not really staining, it's just biofilm buildup from not cleaning. So all that to say that essentially you can keep it in the mouth for much longer as well if you want to, or really just however it makes sense for that case.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask questions that, for example, for rotations, we should definitely use the attachments if they're, for example, more than 15 degrees, for example, in canines or premolars. Should we use it in direct aligners? It's or not necessary?
Yeah, I mean, for this webinar, I don't want to speak too much into the clinical aspect since that's really not my role. I'm really on the lead of the support and tech side of things. But I think that traditionally from biomechanics, we have certain movements that we know are like rotations, anterior, like, canine rotations, things like that are really difficult. And being able to apply the right force in the right direction is something that likely still requires attachments in a lot of cases. But it's definitely case specific. And it's a big part of sort of what the planning, the people who really are doing the planning process are going to be a big part of helping you decide that. We're partnered up, or we're good friends with Jean-Marc Retrouvé, who, if you've seen him on LinkedIn, he's doing a lot of research into exactly what you're asking. But the right answer to your question right now is that this is so new that we do not know the answer. And there might be ways that we can add thickness or connect aligners to different aspects of things where we can apply forces that we couldn't before with aligners, right? If we can imagine connecting palatally to be able to have more rigidity and things like that, like there's a lot of things that we'll be able to try now that really just wasn't feasible before because of the level of freedom that we have with the digital design and going direct to something so accurate and ready to go in the mouth. So yeah, I mean, for sure we're seeing a reduction in attachments. But saying no attachments, I think, is not quite right. I think like you're basically saying, there are certain movements that are really essentially not going to be possible without attachments. So I think it's just a work in progress, but it's looking very promising that it's definitely reduced attachments. So reduced chair time and hopefully lower cost per aligner, faster delivery, a lot of really positive aspects of this.
All right, great. Thank you. We got one more question and then we'll let you move on and take some questions in a bit. When will LuxFlow start accepting shells or STLs from other softwares?
Okay, so it does already. So if you see there where it says general, we can bring in files of any type and orient and support them manually. So you don't have to have it in any, and then also by the way, like dentures and night guards, those are also not designed currently in LuxDesign. So it's not that you can't bring in files to LuxFlow that aren't designed in LuxDesign. So hopefully that answers the question. Essentially, we do already have that freedom. And then in terms of, with a shell, the question of, and we'll be coming to that here in a second as well, because essentially you can use any intraoral scanner that can create a .stl file to work in LuxDesign, and then any file to print in LuxFlow. So it's very open in that sense. It's not open source in the way that some printers are when it comes to like being able to completely customize your print profile and things like that, or putting new resins in that they're not pre-approving. They're not open in that way as of now. Also, like exporting from LuxDesign, you can't just export STLs. It has to be proprietary files that go to that go through LuxFlow or are meant to go to LuxFlow. But other than that, they're quite open, which we're huge fans of.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so here we're still in the software. We're gonna do, so here we're basically, we finished our design. And again, the creation of aligners is a very similar process to the tray or the retainer creation that we went through. It's just the aligner setting instead, and usually you're bringing in more files at a time. But all that ends up being automated, and people can just walk away and come back when it's finished. Like I said, depending on your computer, it's between like a minute and a half to up to 8 or 10 minutes if you're really on a lower quality computer. Also, like I said, they're going to be coming out with their cloud software, and that could change everything as well. So we'll go ahead and hit play here, but we're going to go show you. So essentially, the 45-degree support allows you to print slightly faster, so between 45 minutes and an hour, and the 70-degree support is more like an hour to hour and 15. But of course, with the 70-degree support, you can fit more on the build tray. So that's usually advantageous for that reason. Here's examples of essentially what we were saying is like when you bring in a night guard file, these are the different versions of auto supporting that it can provide. So here we're going to choose our aligner retainer since that's what we're working on. And here we go export to LuxFlow from our LuxDesign. When we finish this and it's generated and we've labeled, we just hit export and boom, it comes over here. We make sure that we have one click checked off, and then we just hit confirm. Oh yeah, so you have to have a parameter setting ready, and so in 70 degrees, that's usually what we use, so we have that one. So here it brings in those files, and now it is essentially orienting it and creating the supports for it. And again, this is on that computer that was not, it was basically the GPU isn't working. So it's actually quite fast. This part is really fast on a good computer. So here's what it comes in like. Here they have it so that they're as close as possible so you can fit as much on the tray. This is in DCA. It shows you like the type of resin you're using. And then once we go to slicing, it'll even tell you how much you're going to use. Here you can see we can move them obviously individually. If you've ever used a 3D printer, this is very standard for other slicing softwares, but you can just be able to manipulate these devices on the build plate so you can fit everything that you want. Some slicers don't have the ability to do this, so we like to just show that is like you can rotate multiple things at a time, which can make things easier. Here, when you're hitting slice, it allows for hole inspection and the safe distance check. So it basically checks on some things to make sure you're not going to have issues printing. This is just saying that it thinks it's still kind of close to each other, but we know we're going to be okay there. And now we've clicked slice basically. And again, on this computer, it took 1 minute and 20 seconds. On a better computer, it's quite fast, or quite a bit faster than that. So that's basically the design and LuxFlow process. Here, you would basically click, if your printer's on the same network, you would click upload to printer, and it allows you to send that straight over to your printer, which is what we'll see in the next slide. Any questions before we move on to basically printing and post-processing?
Let me check here real quick. I don't think so. Does anyone, if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and let me know.
Yeah, anytime. We can stop anytime as well.
Okay.
So here, I'm gonna have to. We prepared our printer. We made sure we have enough resin, DCA resin in our vat. We make sure that we're using our Leap C Plus, which will be that white film. So not the clear film at the bottom of your vat, but the white one, so that we're getting that digital polishing for our clear appliances. Make sure our build plate's nice and clean, and also that we're nice and tight up here, as well as on our two sides. And I like to go to quick operation and turn on my heating a little early, just so that it doesn't take really any time once I hit start. And then on your printer, on the software, once you're finished uploading, we'll have covered that in a previous part of the video, but you're going to have clicked upload to printer. And then assuming it's on the same network, it'll show up here. And you go ahead and hit confirm. And you have to go ahead. So So now we're shooting that over to our printer. And it's real time, so it's sending a course on your system, about a minute to shoot that over. So that worked out. And now on your printer, it'll just show up that it just came in. So you can do okay there. Pop it into this menu here. So this is printing. And then you're going to choose whichever file you want. So in our case, we want this guy. It says right here, it's going to take an hour and 14 minutes in DCA at the 100 micron layers. Go ahead and hit print. Now we can go ahead and close our lid. So yeah, the temperature going up to 40 C, which is the print temperature for DCA. It just really helps thin out, like make it a slightly less viscous, and we'll be done in just over an hour. Move on to post-processing. All right, so that's essentially just how to start the print. Real basic. It's pretty similar to most printers you've experienced. I can say from my experience dealing with a lot of different printers, LuxCreo's printer is incredibly robust. It's very, very solidly built. DLP is sort of the most proven technology for having the most control, especially for accuracy. And that kind of added light intensity that they have the ability to have in compared to LCD or even some of the newer versions of like MSLA and things like that. They can provide a lot of power, but the accuracy is generally better with DLP. And their heating process, the heater in this is very, very efficient, infrared. So big fan of just overall the quality of the equipment for sure. All right, our print just finished. And so I will do a quick video of removing it from the build plate. All right, so we have our plate off of our printer. I like to use an old magazine, and this is a LMT magazine, if you happen to have those laying around. And then I just rip each of these off after I finish taking off my build plate. I just rip that off and put it in the trash, but obviously there's many ways to skin that cat. So what I like to do this. Just finished. Start on one side and don't move back and forth like this to do it. Just go right up against it, and then if anything, you kind of move back and forth left and right. So you see that one just came right off. All right, our print just finished. Okay, we'll leave it in that slide since I'm having some internet issues there. Sometimes with LuxCreo, when they want to fit as many as they can on a plate, they just get a little close to each other, but it's really easy to take them apart after. So obviously you can fix that digitally before you hit print. I, in this case, just kind of let it do its AI thing and didn't mess with it. So that's why that looks like that. And so now, depending on if you're about to start another print, obviously you can literally put it back just like this, and you can get going. Otherwise, it's recommended that you use a shop towel or some kind of lint-free paper towel to clean off your build plate, just like this. And then go ahead and start. I like to start on the small edge. So I do a wipe like this. Keep going if you got a knife that's not crazy amount. And then a fold. So you come off like that. Then fold one time. And then spin. And we'll do the other side. Like that. So here, I really just wanted to showcase how easily you can, how approachable this is clinically, right? Obviously. I don't know if we want to see. We clean this off, and then I kind of have just a little bit left in the middle. So you can see with one towel, in general, you should be able to pretty much get it all off of there. And then if you're gonna let it sit for a while, it's a good idea to use a little bit of IPA and just give this another wipe down with the same type of shop towel with a little bit of IPA. So we're gonna have another print here very soon. So we're gonna put this right on back into the printer to your printer. And if you lift it up like this, you're gonna get this all the way back like this. And then before you're screwing this down, you just want to push here so that we know it's all the way back. And then just give it a couple of turns until it's a little bit tight. And then you can come up here and give it a nice big crank. All right, and now we're ready for our next print. All right, so now here's an example of the tray. This is printed and ready to go. Here's what we don't want to do. So this is the wash basket. What we don't want to do is put it in this way, where if we let it sit after it's finished with its wash process, since our bath is automated and will empty, bring in the reservoir one, empty back out, bring in reservoir two, empty back out. That way you're getting the double wash, but you don't have to sit there and babysit it. You don't have to do anything in between. So you want to put it entirely upside down. So that way it doesn't hold the IPA inside the tray. So we'll go ahead and put all these trays. You can definitely fit 12 at a time. Obviously it comes down to the amount of liquid in the bath that can become an issue. So here I'm only doing 8 aligners in there. So honestly, it really is not an issue when it's connected like this. So just like that, just kind of pull it apart, twist, and we go ahead and put this in our baskets, again, entirely upside down, so that we are not allowing that IPA to sit inside there. Now, before I take my gloves off, I'm going to wipe down. I'm going to take one glove off, throw a lid off, so I don't have any other work to do. Go straight into our bath, like so. Right. So as you can see, we're ready to go. Put our lid on. And in our case, we have our IPA already in there. Here's reservoir one, reservoir two. So your reservoir is closed. We're all set up here. We're going to go to wash, and we're going to do a solvent and powerful and start. So here it tells you right there, when washing the liners, please make sure the shell is facing down. Again, that's so you can walk away and not have to worry about, coming right back at the right time. Now it's making sure everything's all closed up and proper. And it's going to pull the IPA from this bath into this chamber. And then it's going to begin agitating with a magnetic impeller type of thing. And it has an ultrasonic bath as well. And it's also a heating bath for different types of solvents. So it's really a 3-in-1 system that's super automated and really a great feature. So we're going to let this run. It's going to take 8 minutes, and we'll see you at the end of that. All right, so our wash is complete. Our tray here for our Lux Oven Pro. And now we're going to go and open this up. And as you can see, our wash has been completed. As they dry, they will get a little bit sticky, like slightly tacky, but you just want to make sure. And also, like, another thing you can check, anytime, the best, if there's any residue, it will likely be in these wells and some of the deeper wells, like your 8 and 9 or your front incisors there. So just check to see that those look good. In this case, I think we're looking great. So we're going to go ahead and put these. As you can see inside here, they have these little stands that represent the base of these aligners. So you can go ahead and pop these on here pretty easily. Last but not least, we'll place this guy right here. All right. Now, so once you have all these in, and you make sure they're not touching the side, this one, right here, not touching the side, not touching each other, just like this. And the next thing you want to do is put this in your in your oven. Just go slowly, you don't want to let those fall over. So just give it a nice little gentle push in. And once it's seated all the way, it'll power up. Push the power button. And program 1, actually, when you first get it, you have to program it, but it's 10 minutes at 130 degrees Celsius. So you just program number 1 for that, and then push play, and we're up and running. So in 10 minutes, this will be finished. Okay, and then I like to take this out, and especially because mine's up high. So I just put this right here, real carefully, right next to her. And then we're gonna go ahead and take each of these out and place it on our tray here, where we have enough room. Basically, you're just gonna fan it out around the edges. Again, as long as they're not touching each other, totally fine. So you can definitely fit 12 of them on here easily enough. And then this clearing unit also comes with a shorter stem so that you can actually fit taller items in there if you want. Okay? If your cure is more at eye level, it also has a feature where you can just push a button and it'll rotate for you. I find that to be not as useful in the sense that like you have to be kind of perfect, as it's rotating to put one on, and it's not that easy. So anyway, once you have it in there, you're gonna see here. You're going to do a liner retainer, and then it's curing. So, this takes 20 minutes. And when this is finished, it's on to just simply ripping those supports off, a quick polish, and we're all done. So, we'll get there here in the next step. All right, we're back. So, curing complete. We can go ahead and take this out so you can see it's nice and clear. Okay, so that takes us essentially through all the steps before support removal and polishing the margin line. Any questions at this point can be taken. Otherwise, we'll have plenty of time for questions after this next short video.
We did have one question about is the material work on other printers such as Formlabs?
No, I mean, like LuxCreo doesn't currently have partnerships with any other manufacturers like that. I don't foresee that happening.
Although it is nice that it's open source. So, I mean, you have with this printer, you have access to like Keystone resins and other ones. So, Mike.
Yeah, no, I mean their work environment or the LuxCreo environment allows for quite a few other resins that are honestly sort of the top of the game in those different categories, like for like crown and bridge, removable dentures, all on X, like there's surgical guide, like there's really a lot, like they have solutions for all these different versions. But if the question is straight up like, can you take this resin and currently use it on a different printer, that's definitely not something that LuxCreo is encouraging at all. And you're not really meant to be able to purchase this resin if you haven't purchased the system. I mean, again, there are a lot of companies who tried to come out with a direct print clear aligner before LuxCreo, and what it comes down to is it's a very, very and even Graphy actually turned out like they wanted to have their resin approved on essentially many different printers, kind of like what you're describing. And they decided not to do that either. They've moved to only using the unis. So I think that what they found is in order to really make this not only clinic friendly, but consistent and work every time, it takes a little more than just having a print profile that's supposed to work on all different printers. And being able to perfect that to the level they want to, and have the quality and quality control that they want in this process is something that requires that to not be the case currently. Who knows what will happen in the future? Obviously, many different resin companies will be trying to get into this game as time goes on. There's no doubt. But as it stands, I think, and we'll talk here in a bit when I'm going through the post-processing here or the polishing aspect, a couple more reasons why having this all under one umbrella is actually really, really important, or it allows for things that you otherwise just couldn't do. Yeah.
Okay, great. How are we doing on time?
We're a little over right now, but we have like a 6-minute video, and then we pretty much go to Q&A. We're very close.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
Here. Okay. So here's what our trays look like right off of the cure. What we're going to do is I want to show you just what it's like to post-process just a couple of these. So the first thing I like to start with is the back here. I always start on the posteriors. Just give that a crack off like that. Then do the same thing on the other side. Now It's super easy to just peel this whole thing off, just like that. Really, really cool. This is one of my favorite things about the LuxCreo version of direct print aligners. Oh, before we do any of this, I'm gonna go ahead and just rip off the rest of these just to show you how fast it's really doable. Once you get kind of like used to it, you know, you don't want to bend the aligners more than you have to, but remember the huge advantage of these direct print aligners is the shape memory, right? So every time your client is going to put this in their mouth, they will, or once a day, they will use the LuxCreo, ideally the LuxCreo bath. It's an ultrasonic bath that also heats the water to 60 degrees Celsius in about 2 minutes. So for the remainder of the 10-minute wash cycle, the aligners are actually at a close enough temperature to their glass transition temperature to come back to shape. And this is a super interesting and awesome feature to basically 3D printed things instead of a thermoformed aligner or basically any kind of plastic that was simply sort of injection molded in some sense. So they injection mold it into sheets, and then they put the sheets over a model and they thermoform down the model. And so once it stretches or strains past a certain point, there's no way to get it back on traditional aligners. Whereas with 3D printed aligners, when you heat them up, and depending on which version you go with, they have different glass and different temperatures and different types of flexibility within the mouth. LuxCreo is quite a bit higher than Graphy, for example. So they stay much more rigid in the mouth. But when you heat them up to 60°C, they return back to their shape. And so each day, they are basically like the first day that you had them in. And every time you heat them up, they'll flex less throughout the day. So now that we have these, the supports we've got for those, as you can see, that was really fast. I'm gonna go ahead and take my Dremel tool. I like to start, you like to hold it like this. I like to start on one of these edges, and I just real softly do this. You can see it takes it right off, like it's literally done. Now I like to polish it after. I'll play it with just a normal lab handpiece. I don't know how you can hear me. But as you can see, this comes off very, very, very good. Glasses, definitely wear glasses. Okay, so we don't need to be real careful at this stage because we're going to go ahead and do this again, like I said, with this polisher. Kind of run your hand there. All right, so we have our initial stages finished. The initial polishing is done. And now I like to use just the finish here and just do, you know, I might like a third of the way or about a quarter to a third of the speed. And then I just like to hit this one more time. And especially in areas when we were talking about if the margin line is scalloped, for example, or just not straight, these grinders tend to do a bit of a better job. They're able to reach in. And again, still very light, but this is just a real quick finish up. So the next step after here is essentially just to rinse these guys. And then I like to use a dehydrator that does two things. A dehydrator will obviously evaporate all the moisture left over, and it will also heat up the device enough to also return it back to shape, sort of like into its exact printed shape. And you know, that way when you cool it down and you let it sit like that, it's ready for packaging. And again, one of the beauties of LuxCreo system is they make all of the equipment, they make the resin, and they make their design software. So what happens is what they've done with the DCA, and every time they come out with a new resin or they approve a new resin on their system, what they do is they, you know, take their digital design, they print that design, and they try to find the best settings from a print perspective, specifically just the printer. How well can we make this happen and make it efficient and everything? But then they scan that printed prosthetic and they put it back into the digital software. And again, printed prosthetic with the best accuracy they can attain from just the settings on the printer. And then they can put that back in the digital design software, and they can actually edit their digital design according to the actual results that they're getting and the consistent, let's say the consistent inconsistencies. The incisal edge here is quite a bit thinner in the digital design than the posteriors and the walls, the top aspect. And the reason is, as it's printing and dipping in each time, they found, especially once this area is kind of full of resin, because it's becoming pooling inside there, it tends to cure a little thicker. So they were able to digitally change the design so that the final product, the printed product, is as accurate as possible. And again, that's really only something you can accomplish when you have control of the whole architecture like that. So we're huge fans of LuxCreo and just how versatile and useful it is. Their workflow allows for simple rinse and then inspection, where you look for any kind of particulate left from your sanding process or your polishing process. So that pretty much takes us through what it's like in a clinic setting to actually produce these. And I mean, we're going to look at some comparisons here. So this is
Hey,
what we just went through.
we do have a question when you're
Sure.
ready to answer it.
Yeah,
Are patients required to preheat the aligners before placement?
No, so you do not need to preheat the aligners to put them in the mouth. The heating is really for the purpose of cleaning and shape, and the heating is primarily for the shape recovery each day. Now, if you don't have a good fit, when you first place the aligner, and let's say it's the first time they're placing the aligner, it can help for comfort to have it warm to some degree. And also if it was during shipping, let's say, these are not climate controlled generally when they're being shipped. So in the shipping process, if it were to warm enough, it could bend, and then when it got to you, it'd be like out of shape. So it's not a bad idea to, before placing it in your mouth, do a shape recovery before the patient uses the aligner. But the aligner does not need to be warm when being put in the mouth. So no, that would be kind of annoying in general from a use perspective. And yeah, so essentially this is the whole workflow for a LuxCreo system. So you take an intraoral scan. Again, it's compatible with anything that can put out an STL or I think it's also PLI compatible. So either way, pretty much any scanner is going to be able to do those too. And then the treatment planning process, that's in your hands, but it's very open to be able to work with just about any workflow that you're comfortable with. So there's a lot of different treatment planning softwares out there that have their pros and cons, and let's say some loyalty. Then we take our treatment plan, we go into our LuxDesign, we create our tray, we print we slice, we nest, which you guys all saw, and it's very, very automated. Our printing process is really simple and kind of what we're used to, but at a very high quality. And then the post-processing is how you saw it. So it's basically they at LuxCreo are finding an average about 1.5 minutes of time per aligner of actual like hands-on labor. And when we compare this to the traditional thermoformed workflow, it's something like 5.5 minutes for traditional aligners. Of course, it depends on your staff and how often you're doing this and all of that. But ultimately, it's a huge savings of time, which I think is potentially even more than just the savings on the material. But of course, it's also quite a bit considerably cheaper to be producing these in-house. It comes down to something around $5 to $6 per aligner for your own material, for the materials. And yeah, these are all the other resins that are currently in the workflow for LuxCreo. So again, for all the different dental applications that we're really used to, they have approved resins that they're working with and work print profiles that have been really nailed down to be as accurate as possible, and to make it so that the workflow in the clinic is just as easy as possible. So from the design side of things, they're not working too much on like designing dentures and things like that just yet. And there are definite solutions out there that we can help you with. We can connect, we can provide designs, we can connect you with systems that allow for this type of thing to happen really seamlessly for your clinic. And coming through us just means that only one place has to, you don't have to have multiple different providers for your designs. But the digital design world is happening fast, and it's changing fast, and AI is coming fast. So either way, this is a very, very opportune time to be jumping in, get your hands in, and have that experience as we move into this being kind of becoming the norm, I think.
All right.
So,
Let's see, we have a question about microscopic plastics.
okay.
Let me see here.
Yeah, Mike, I just wanted to know, are these resins less of a microplastics concern, chemically speaking, than the Zendura materials and all the other, materials being used in aligners?
Sure. And now,
Well,
are you
Also, just
microplastic?
from a waste standpoint, there's a lot less waste. You know, you're
Right.
not
Right.
throwing it all,
Yeah, there've just been a few published articles lately about increasing concern over microplastics. And if these are resins, which are, like there's some orthodontists considering shifting to glass ionomer resins for bracket placement instead of our usual bonding adhesives. So
But
if
you're
parents
saying
ask,
the release of microplastics in the mouth intraorally.
I'm sorry, what?
You're referring, these are microplastics that you're referring to as like being released intraorally, or
Right,
microplastics?
there are some concerns that aligners are, leaching microplastics into the mouth. So if this is a different type of resin that does not qualify as, I'm just asking, is this resin any different than, chemically speaking, less of a microplastics concern, or are they all just in the same
Yeah.
microplastics concern?
I would want to do more research to answer you properly. So I don't want you to, so just know in advance, this is what my impression would be off the top of my head. But I do know that 3D printed plastics can be recycled in ways that thermoform plastics cannot. And it just basically comes down to like how small you can get it in terms of like how small of a particle or sized piece at it that you can then use in a new resin, essentially. So that's more of like a economic or like a environmental concern perspective. From a microplastics leaching perspective, I don't have data for that on these, so I'd want to look into that and give you a better answer later. I do think though that like what Paul is going to bring up is essentially like from a larger concern, because we're also ingesting microplastics from what I understand in like a lot of what we eat, and it's
Yeah,
being.
sure. Yeah, I'm not concerned. I'm just
Oh,
trying
I understand. No, it's a great question, and I honestly want to look
yeah.
into it. But from the perspective of microplastics environmentally, there's a huge shift here, right? Obviously, there's much less waste, and we're not printing models at all. So there's a massive advantage from that perspective. And a thermoset is there is definitely advantages from a thermoset to a thermoform. From again a comparison between, like, honestly, intraorally, what we would be primarily concerned would be free monomers, and this system is much more robust to avoid that, I would say, than other systems, or the other system that's currently available. So that's one of the major reasons that we did the shift from graphite to LuxCreo. And that's not to say that curing under nitrogen or curing in an environment isn't something we can move towards, but from a safety perspective, currently, I think we're really much more comfortable with this being able to run it through double IPA, get rid of all the residual resin, because the other concern would be like water sorption, and then the release of that water in the mouth, right, during the cleaning process. If you let it soak and then you put it in the mouth, and that it's becoming more dry, let's say, and it's releasing into orally, that's where maybe your microplastics would be coming in, as well as free monomers if they were there. So
I seem
it's
to
definitely
recall
something.
a journal report. I'll see if I can find it. It may be on our website, but it's been a while since I looked at it. So I'll get you.
I don't know. I haven't seen one about microplastics specifically. Definitely about free monomers. So, but that's something we'll definitely look into. So thanks for.
Yes, they're Nirchos Panai, out of Greece, I think, has just published a microplastics article. It's Panay.
We, believe it or not, have worked with him. We're working with him for some direct printed brackets that he's been working on for a while. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Then,
Well,
yeah,
maybe I'll just reach out to him and see if I can get some answers for you.
fantastic. Great,
Awesome.
thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you for joining today. Is there anything else before we conclude? And again, here's how to get a hold of us. So please feel free to reach out. We're here to assist in anything you
Yeah,
need.
we ran
Let
a
us
little
know.
long, so sorry about that, guys, but you had some amazing questions. We love that. Just interactive, being able to, and hey, Paul, thanks for being able to bring people with voice questions. I think that's really, it adds a lot to the conversation. So,
Great.
thank you guys all for attending. We really are excited to increase well-being through digital dentistry by allowing these technologies to really do what they can do at scale. So please reach out, and even if it's just for questions and for us to learn from you, that's what we're really here for the long haul. So
All right. Hey, great. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
have a great day, everyone. Aloha.